Because it's time for some podcasting. We hope you keep on listening. Because it's time for talking Tremors stuff. Talking Tremors stuff. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Talking Tremors podcast. As always, I am your host, Levi Dylan Berthloff-Flett, and I have a special episode for you for our 50th episode. This is the 50th episode. We're almost on year two. Year two will happen January 20th. Oh, it did. January 23rd. Already happened. And I got a special guest here, the writer of the official guide to Tremors. I know it's unofficial. I don't care. It's the official guide to Tremors. Jonathan Melville, everybody, welcome. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for inviting me on.
Always welcome, man. Like that's
and happy 50th anniversary.
It's no Day of the Doctor special, but we'll take what we can. And yeah, I said this earlier, but every chance I get, I talk up this book to people. I buy it for people and I send it to them just because. It's like you were saying, like, oh, your podcast, everyone's gonna learn everything. It's like, no. Like, everything I know about Tremors started with this book right here. Absolutely. You're the reason this podcast exists, John. I know you're probably like,
oh,
I know, but it is.
That's nice to hear.
It really is. And actually, this morning I listened to all of your Tremor Cast episodes, which that was 2016, 2015, 2016 that you were releasing those. And I was like, man, I'd love for John to just do a Tremors podcast. Just keep going. Just keep going, man. But go ahead and I'm talking too much because I love you so much, but go ahead and introduce yourself. Do your jazz.
Yeah, well, I am Jonathan Melville. I live in Scotland. I live in Edinburgh, which is, I'm sure lots of people know, is the capital of Scotland. And yeah, back in I write about films usually, and I've been doing that since, I don't know, 2006 or 7 or something like that. Not trained to be a writer or anything. I didn't do journalism or anything like that. I just sort of was always a film and TV fan. I started out as a big Doctor Who fan. Careful not to go off on a tangent. But that is the show that kind of got me hooked on TV, really, and wanting to learn. When I got into Doctor Who, it was 1987-ish, 88, and just as I was getting to become a super fan, it got cancelled. So then I discovered there were 25 years of history, so of the series, and so that's when I started diving into all the old episodes and then learning about other things that people have been in. And it just took me off into this world of, I suppose, I mean, film and TV, but mainly older film and TV. So things like The Prisoner and, I don't know, lots of the ITC shows, The Saint and Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, and The Avengers. And then I suppose, so I think TV was my big thing for many years. And then when I went to university to do publishing in Edinburgh, that's when I discovered, I mean, I'd obviously been to the cinema a lot, but I lived in a little village in the Highlands of Scotland for quite a few years, even though I was born in Edinburgh. Complicated story, but so I remember when I was.
That's you jumped back and forth a little bit. Your family immigrated.
Yeah.
So
Australia as well.
Yeah.
Part of it. Yeah, jumping about a little bit. So so I just remember when I was kind of, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, going to see things like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and stuff like that, and then at the cinema, and then we moved away to somewhere where there was no cinema. So that's why I think TV became easier, of course, to watch, and then when I went to university, there were lots of cinemas in Edinburgh. So that's when I started more. I just got more interested in film, I suppose, and cinema. And yeah, and it took a few years to actually decide to try and write about it and try and make some money out of it. So that's kind of a long answer, I suppose, but
no, it's fine. It was a perfect answer. I have got these initial questions, which is, it's more for the podcast audience, because I like I said, I learned your story pretty well here in terms of what we were doing. So I gotta reel in the fans, gotta reel in the folks with a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah, totally.
of early nuggets. Uh, and because you just said about making money or whatever, and I was just gonna ask, have you actually made any money on any of it yet? But I know it's probably
Yeah,
a
well,
like
Tremors, I've made my money back on that. I mean, it's been out now for, as we were saying earlier before, it's been out for about nine years now, almost.
Mhm.
And I self-published that book, and it's not something that I ever shouted about because I think back in 2015, I think it was seen as a little bit embarrassing, perhaps, to self-publish a book. And even now, there's some people who think it's a bad idea. But I just thought Tremors was such a niche thing and I'd never written a book before. I thought, well, no one's going to give me money to write a book. So I did it on a real budget and tried to make it as good as I could, and it's made its money back. So that's good. And and I have and I do sort of freelance a little bit. I work for a company for sort of 3 or 4 days of the week, and then I also do some freelancing, and that includes a bit of writing here and there. So yeah, so I do still earn some money, but it doesn't make me rich.
well then my it's such an interest, it's so stupid, but what is your day job? You don't have to tell me like where you work and stuff, but I was like, what's your actual day job that you do outside of the
Well, it does vary quite a bit, to be honest. I mean, the at the moment, my day job is working for university, and it's working. I did a master's in screenwriting a few years ago, and as part of that course, there was some help to to try and find work. Not that it's easy to find work as a screenwriter, but there was sort of a little bit of help to sort of see what else was out there. So anyway, now I work as one of those people trying to help students find work. Basically, that's
oh,
that's the way to sort of summarize it, I suppose.
oh,
Um, but it's difficult, getting any work in film and TV is obviously very very competitive. So it's not an easy job, and my boss does a lot more than me, I think. But yeah, so I do that, and then as I said, sort of other days of the week, I still do a bit of writing. I'm trying to do some other books, the odd podcast, the odd Blu-ray commentary or booklet essay or just whatever comes along, really.
my wife Caitlin, when we just watched the Tremors 2 commentary the other week, and she was just like, "Oh, that guy, like, besides the fact that he's Scottish, just sounds like you talking about Tremors right now." I'm like, "Yeah," because I basically just steal pretty much everything from like all those facts he's listing. I list in my own show, and I say John said that. Like that's it's about the only difference.
Well, I mean, those commentaries, the Tremors ones, of course, I've written a book on Tremors, so I'm going to take things from that book. So that's, but it's tough, sitting. I mean, it's tough doing the podcast thing that you're doing, but it's tough when someone says, sit in a room on your own for 90 minutes and just talk about this film. Uh, it's hard.
Yeah, no, actually, the first 3 or 4 episodes of the show, I went backwards, and I started with 7, and then 6, and then 5, and then 4, doing commentary tracks for him, and she was really hard. I did it as a way of like 5, 6, and 7. I'm just like, okay, you don't like these, like get this out of the way and do this early, and it's just like you make a paper just like this, you just write it all down, and you're like, okay, that happens, and then so I'm gonna say that,
Yeah,
and bravo, you don't have the the fallback to, so it's interesting listening to your commentary, which is you could basically have just picked up Seeking Perfection and just went to the Tremors 2 chapter and just like went from the beginning. You're like, oh, he's literally, that's nice, good
yeah,
job. And then you got on the other side of it like Steve and Nancy's, who are just kind of like randomly coming in with different stuff or whatever, and you don't got that
totally.
fall, the actual memory. So using your own is really really interesting, which was actually my goal of this, is that I wanted you to just be raw, just give me all your weirdest answers possible. So we're already off to a good start on that. So then my
Cool.
question is, why do you love Tremors? Like, why out of everything, like, I've heard some of the lead up to it in terms of watching it the first time and the sense of community, but like, give us the Jonathan Melville, the Melville reason why you love Tremors.
I mean, this is the problem. There are lots of answers, I think, and they all it's I can't come up with it with new ones, but I think there are all those things I've said, of course, are true. And when I watch the film, I think I don't know. It's just I think it's an overused term, of course, but I think it's a perfect film. And I don't say that just as well. I hope I'm not saying it just because I'm a fan. I think because if you look at the structure, even just if you're you're looking at it as the structure of a script and a screenplay, I think anybody who analyzes it, I think of course at first glance people think, oh, it's just a daft, stupid monster movie because there's millions of those. But I
Mhm.
think it's so perfectly crafted. And what I love in films, one of the things I love about films is when they have callbacks to things. So, the setup and payoff. And that Back to the Future is another one of my absolute favorite films. Perhaps my favorite. It changes between that and The Third Man, and Tremors is right up there as well. But Back to the Future, of course, is perfect for that because there's so many setups and payoffs. Within the first 5 or 10 minutes, there's the leaflet about the clock tower, and then of course the clock tower comes into it later, and he uses the leaflet. So it's things like that which Tremors does as well. So I think just from a craft point of view, I think watching it is amazing. And we could just spend hours really about all the things I love about it, but I don't know. I genuinely think it's those characters, those actors. Michael Gross, I've been watching. We have this channel called Pluto, which you probably have as well, and it's on my TV, and it's one of those ones where they have 24 hours almost of the same program on its own little channel, and they've got family ties, and so I've been watching. I put it on sometimes in the background, and I didn't watch it much before I wrote the Tremors book. It was on in the UK back in the 80s, I think, but it's not a huge thing over here. But anyway, just watching it now and seeing Michael and knowing him a little bit, we're not, of course, none of us are best friends with Michael Gross, but to have spoken to him a few times and met him and things, and of course then to have seen his Burt Gummer, and then there's this guy on the TV, and you just think, what a performance he did, and yeah. So I don't know. So I think it's the actors, it's the characters they play. Yeah, I can't actually narrow it down to one thing, but I just think and it's just so enjoyable. I mean, this is the thing why we come back to it, I think, or I come back to it because it's just so much fun. It passes in a heartbeat. The film's over before it's even begun. It's such a fast, short. It's not a short film, but it feels like it. And anyway,
It
I hope that
and
helps.
no, no, no. That's why it's at the beginning. That's why, because I knew it's a complicated question. Because
Yeah,
it's
it is a bit.
uh, because while I think Tremors is a perfect film, it's not my favorite. Four is my favorite movie, but I always come back to. But that, like, I can still recognize that first Tremors movie is just it. If you're making a screenwriting class, Tremors is your all right. This is how you make a movie right here. This is what we're doing because
Yeah.
it's the payoff, the characters, everything happening in the background, the effects work. It is a perfect movie. Which is that my next question was, is it perfection? And I feel like you just answered that. That was
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. But yeah, I mean in a way it's well, of course it's brilliant that it is just this daft, crazy little monster movie. But in a way, it's a shame that it is because a lot of people will never watch it because they don't like monster movies. So
oh, I
there's
see
pros and
that.
cons, but you know,
It's like, that movie about the worm with the that Kevin Bacon worm movie. I don't care. You're like, you are missing out on something great. But you know what? That's fine. Go watch whatever you need to. Everybody's allowed to, but you're still like, oh, you'd really like that if you gave it that chance. Like
yeah,
that's. I was
yeah,
listening to Tremors cast with Brent Maddock, and he was him his lament about the poster, where that poster just really would put people off at the beginning because they're like, oh,
yeah.
that movie, or that Jaws rip off, the Roger Cormaniness of it. It's like that's makes me sad. I feel for that where it's like, no, no, no. It's a little monster movie that could chuggity chug chug.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before the SFX article, which so everyone knows that's how Jonathan got his start with his whole Tremors business. Before that, like what started your Tremors journey? Like to that, like watching it the first time or developing a love for it that like what started it so that by the time you make the SFX article, you're like, yeah, I love Tremors this much. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, it's a film and a franchise, I suppose, that just crept up on me, and I was a fan without even knowing I was a fan, I think. And of course, I did watch it. I was looking at the book again. November 1992 is what I say is when I watched it.
I just read
I
that.
think it was yeah, I think that was the first time it was on
Mhm.
BBC One, and so obviously something must have happened, and I must have just it lodged itself in my brain. But I think I may be right in this book, or maybe it was the Highlander book that at that point, I think it was this one. There was there for Tremors, there was no merchandise, of course, famously. So I couldn't go and even if there was, I couldn't have bought it where I was living because there was no, not many shops there anyway. But there were there was no merchandise, so I couldn't even buy a novelization or a poster or a toy or anything like that. So I guess it was just one of those films you watch and then think, oh, that was really good, and I didn't have a video, so didn't see it again for a few years. But what I can remember, and again, I'm sure everything. Well, a lot of what I'm telling you is going to be in the book, but a lot isn't. So when I went to Canada, I've got cousins in Canada, and I think it was in 1996 we went over, and we went to the video store, and in those good old days when we had video stores, and I can remember us all looking at these videos, and Tremors 2 was there. And of course, I had no idea that even existed because there was no internet and film magazine. I think I maybe got Starburst film magazine, but I don't know if it mentioned Tremors 2. So I was just really surprised. So something, maybe it was me, maybe it was my cousins, I don't know, but made us get this video out and watch it in their basement. And again, just I remember just loving it and thinking this is well, it's perfection. This is just another amazing film. And we're
Pun.
so lucky.
It's a good pun. Like,
Yeah, well, we're so lucky because Steve and Brent are just such great writers, and they didn't. I think it would be easy to just do a cheap sequel. Well, what is cheap? It was cheap, but a cheap sequel, as in everything's cheap. The writing they didn't put the effort in, or the actors maybe didn't try very hard, or the special effects weren't very good, just because they wanted to make some money. But amazingly, they tried just as hard as they did with the first film on a minuscule budget. So we have this lovely, almost equally as good sequel to the first film. And that kind of pattern just continued over the next few years with either somehow I still who knows, I can't quite know, don't know how I heard about Tremors 3 or 4, but I did. It's just one of those, in those days, that was the thing, wasn't it? You maybe saw it in the shop, or I think the internet was around. It would have been around by uh, Tremors 3, so um, probably read about it on there, or maybe saw a trailer or another DVD. That's possible as well. And even though they were annoying at the time, having to skip through trailers, actually sometimes you would see cool things. So that's possibly where I heard about Tremors 3. So yeah, so it was just that thing as a fan, not even thinking myself as a super fan or anything like that. And then just to kind of fast forward a little bit, you mentioned SFX. I was looking to try and this is when I was trying to get, I suppose, into the writing thing. So I was doing marketing work and communications work for companies. Not the most exciting work, and then going home and watching films. And at some point, I just thought I would actually in Edinburgh, and of course in most cities there are some great theaters. And I remember thinking I'd love to go to the theater more and get some free tickets.
yeah, I just
And
heard you talking about, oh, I want free tickets. And I was like, I didn't even, that's a good idea. That's a good note to sell.
yeah, because I wasn't earning much money, I don't think. And yeah, and I thought, well, if I write about the theater, the plays, they'll give me tickets, and they did, and it worked out well. So, and then I did a night class at I think it was Edinburgh University. Did a night class on writing about films. And I thought, well, I don't know if I can write about films because I've not done it before. So why don't I do a class on it? And so I did. And you had to write short reviews and long reviews and essays and things. And I did well. which was great. And then the marks were good. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I can do this. Started doing, pitched this article to SFX because it was the 21st anniversary of Tremors coming up. Steve Wilson is one of the nicest people on the planet. And I emailed the website, the Stampede website, and said, could I interview you? And he said, yes. And then I must have done the same with Michael Gross. And, got this article written, sent it in. And so then I don't know when would the 21st anniversary have been? That was 2011-ish or
I'm
yeah.
good with not time, but yes, 2011, I would guess.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. And yeah, so I don't know if you want me to go on, but
no, John, in all honesty, this is your show at the moment.
Well, for people who
no,
for people that don't know, I'll just say that basically the short version is that because I mean I'm not the cockiest of people, the sort of person who just thinks, oh, I can do everything brilliantly. I wish I was, because I think those sort of people actually do quite well. But because that's what I was saying about going back to uni and doing a night class, and thought, well, maybe I can write about film. I don't know. And it was the same with the book. I thought I want to write a book, but I don't know if I can. Also, writing about film, every film seems to have been covered. There's how many Alien books are there, or Star Wars, or James Bond, or yeah. And I thought, well, Tremors. I've done this article. I've got these interviews with Steve and Michael, and I've got so much more that I couldn't put in. Why don't I see if I could do something about Tremors? And I kept putting it off and writing down on bits of paper, start researching Tremors book, and then I just wouldn't do it because it's so hard.
Typical writers.
Yeah. Partly procrastinating, but partly just a bit scared, I think, because I thought, well, I've never done this before. What if it's really tough? It's really difficult. I've got to put so much time into it. I don't know how to do it. And then I don't know, whatever reason, I thought, let's just have a go at this. And then it became like a sort of snowball effect of, spoke to Michael, who then I think probably emailed Brent, and then Steve, spoke to Steve again, and actually kind of asked his permission in a way. Would I have done it if he'd said no? I don't know, maybe not, but I just thought it would be polite to ask him, does he mind if I write a book about his film? Because it's not mine. So
Right.
and he was like, no, that would be great. And I think he said he'd been thinking about writing a book about Tremors, about the making of it, and he'd never got around to it. And so then he put me in touch with Brent, and then you speak to one person and they recommend someone else, and I think I spoke to about maybe 55 people in the end, and just such fun speaking to all these amazing. Everybody was lovely. And I don't think maybe one or two people either didn't reply, or the email didn't get through, or said they would and then didn't have the time. But most people, of course I couldn't get Fred. Fred just would never
say that too. It's like the
know.
one interview that everybody wants, and from what I've learned, he's just like that. Like he's
Yeah.
just aloof over there, and trying to get a hold of him in general was always going to be hard. So it's nothing to do with you. I feel like that's just the nature of Fred Ward. That's why we all wanted the interview.
Yeah, I know. But hey, I got Kevin.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy. So yeah, so that's kind of how it all came to be. And I just was, as I say, an accidental fan, and I didn't even know I was until I clearly am.
I have to say, mine's the same thing. Like, I've loved Tremors. Actually, I watched Tremors 2 first as a kid, and that was the only one I knew of for like the longest time. I had no idea there was a Tremors 1. I just assumed Tremors 2 was Tremors 1. And then it's same as you. I think it was watching other movies on DVD, and then that's where I saw Tremors 3 trailer, and then you're like, oh, that's coming out. And then from there, then it was like, oh, it's on TV. It's on the TV show. And I watched the TV show as it aired. And then Tremors 4 came, and then we had a 10-year hiatus, or whatever the hell you want to call that, which we'll get into here. And yeah, you just don't. I didn't realize it until really that seventh movie happened, and then I mean it. Like I read your book, and I was like, oh my god, I have like loved Tremors all this time. I should have been doing this more. Why wasn't I? And then like, oh, that's why there's 50 episodes of a podcast now. It's my way of writing a book and putting off writing a book. I could write a book, but I'm always just like, it's same as you. Like, I don't know. No, I mean, should I? No, I don't need to. Now,
Yeah.
he was writing his book, and I'm like, I'll just help him with the book. I'll just help him with it, and that's it. And we'll just put it off for another 5 years, and maybe down the line after this is all done.
It's
But yeah,
tough. I mean, there are tougher things, of course, in the world, but it is tough because you've got to, of course, interview, arrange the interview as you do. You're doing the same, but you're arranging the interview, trying to get the right time. Of course, we're in different countries, and that was the same for all my interviews because I'm in
you,
the UK. Zoom didn't exist, but Skype did. So I think most of the calls were on Skype, some on phone. I think what's his name now? Tony Gennaro. I think he was over the phone.
like I love your call to him. Like you're just calling him up, and you can because you'd say it like, oh yeah, he was just having coffee, and you could hear him like, oh yeah, it's adorable. I love it so
I
much.
know. I know. I'm so glad I got to speak to him. I'm so glad, and I think that's the thing about with these with any sort of project. But something I discovered was if you have the idea for something, try and do it as soon as you can, even if you're nervous, even if you think you won't be great or whatever, because not people aren't around forever. And I found that out, of course, with Tony and Marsha Strassman as well. And Marsha, I've spoken about a few times in podcasts because I just think she was so lovely. For people that I'm sure everybody knows, but she was in Tremors the series. Yeah, and that was just such a lovely experience speaking to her. And she died not long after, I think. Um, and she'd said at the end of the call, call me back, call again sometime. And people sometimes say, of course, people sometimes say that and they don't mean it. And I think she probably did mean it. And I kind of wish I had, but anyway, so so that's just a little tip for people, because if you don't do it, you might regret it.
Just do it. It doesn't matter. Like I said, that's the whole point of this show is me holding myself accountable to it every single week. I do it every week, even when I don't want to, and it's just like, yeah, okay, yep, because you never know when you lose that next when you lose your Marsha or your Tony or your Fred, it's just gonna happen so quick. And so thanks for not
Totally,
being
totally.
on the show.
Well, you know what? I also just again just to say, uh, I don't know. I mean, I suppose doing this is great and it's great fun, but it would be easy to say no to you and to say no to anybody who asks because we all have our lives and we all have things to do, and sometimes most of it's not that exciting, but it's easy to say no, and I don't think I have said no many times, but actually sometimes if I do think, oh, should I not? I just think of people like Steve and Michael. Michael Gross, who is still a huge star, and was on one of the top-rated TV shows on the planet for years. He was willing to speak to me about, someone who'd never even written a book before and hadn't done many interviews. So I just sort of think, well, if they can do it, and the 55 people that I spoke to, and the hundreds of other people, then I can do it. So that's just to say, if pay it forward a little bit if you can, and be nice to other people. So
Oh yeah, always give it up. On my Tremors Fest was last year, and I will always remember how Michael Gross. He was only there one day, and he spent way too long there that day. And I mean that like in the bet. Like there was 150 fans there, and he spoke to all of them for so long, and to the point where his wife Elsa Gross was sitting there, and she's got her coat or whatever, and you can just see the like,
oh,
Michael, I would like to go home now. And
oh,
he's like, I know. But this one other fan wants a picture and wants to talk to me, so I have to do it. And it's just I I cannot tell you how much like I can't say I was inspired because I was already at that point, but just like that's the Tremors way to me in terms of just give it all because you might not be there Saturday and Sunday in a metaphorical
hmm,
sense. And
hmm.
He did. He spent. I tell people that all the time. Where he spent way too long to be there, to the point where I didn't think there was going to be a Tremors Fest this year because of the whole actors and writers strike. I was pretty sure that that wasn't going to happen. And then I'm pretty sure it was just Michael was like, "Oh no, I want to do it again. I want to do it again." And he just like
Yeah.
kicked back the door and he's like, "Yeah, no, second Tremors Fest." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay, man," because he had so much fun with his one day that he wants to do all 3 days and really be there for it. And I think
Oh, that's great.
like if you give it up, like, and Steve's always for like the last 3 years, I emailed him on the Stampede website, and he's just now we've got like that email like correspondence back and forth, and he's always giving it up when you can. You're just like, okay, just that little bit
Yeah.
more. Like when I'm done here, I'll make sure to send this to both Michael and Steve. Be like, hey, I had John on. Now it's
Oh,
tournament
great.
fair play.
Well, if they're
um,
listening, hi guys. Hope
they
to
love
speak to you soon.
Steve's always like,
But
just all that energy, Levi. I'm like, yeah, someone has to, so it's fine. Uh, so
well,
no,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah,
No, I don't know. I'm just thinking it's just it's such a, it's not a small fandom, of course, Tremors, because we know that how many box sets and how many Blu-rays and DVDs and videos have sold. So there are a lot of fans.
this is sold
There
out
you go.
already. Cannot
Is
believe
it?
that. Like
Is
this
it?
is completely sold out in like a month. By like this came out November 27th,
That's the
and
Tremors 2 set. If
yeah,
yeah,
this is
yeah, no, but so it's not. You know, obviously there are a lot of fans, but at the same time, it's still it feels like a small fandom or franchise, doesn't it? It's I don't quite know how to describe it because it must be huge to sell all those things, but at the same time, I guess it's back to that super fan thing. You know, how many like there's the Facebook page and there are, but there's just so many people anyway. So I don't know. It was just that thing of I guess Michael and Steve and Brent and Nancy and all these guys could easily just go. We've got other things to do. It's not we don't really need to spend time with you guys. Not in a nasty way, but just in a sort of life goes on. We did that years ago. We're happy to take the money for the residuals, but so we're lucky that they don't do that and they actually engage, which is great.
when they show up. Like it's always like I said
Yeah.
to see them go to Tremors Fest and to know too that little bit of what we both know about what happened there, and like there's that pain, but still to face that pain and go in.
Hmm.
Was listening to Nancy and Steve's commentary on the Tremors 2 track where it's just like, oh, you can hear that little bit of longing, that little bit of like, oh, this hurts, and but we're still here and we're trying to do great face and
Yeah.
but yeah, they had such a good time. Which will like I'm jumping ahead on that, but it's just I feel their pain and I appreciate all of them coming out and doing that, and anybody that does. And I would actually on your like, why are there so many people, or how can there be so many people but not? I think it has to do with like it's a monster movie, and people look at that and they go like, okay, but it's weird little monster movie. But once you watch it, there's a community, there's a homely aspect, there's like a lives of lived in that you can feel with the characters. And I think it's why Tremors did so well on VHS is that we're all weird people. Like everybody's like you wrote a whole book about Tremors. I have a whole podcast about Tremors. It's a little like we're just a little.
Yeah.
Steve will be the first one to tell you that like, yeah, I made Tremors because of my B movie like sci-fi roots, like my little nerdy sitting in the theater all the time. And I think we've reached that point where being able to watch movies at home, people don't have to see you go out to the theater to do it. You can be like, oh, I watched it at home, and it's almost like you're afraid of being seen watching that worm movie, but then like everybody's doing it because we're all weird like that. So then everybody's doing that, and they don't realize
Yeah.
that like, oh no, we're all watching Tremors at home. We could just watch this in the theaters, guys. What are we doing here?
Well,
But
it is strange as well because I've written a couple of books, one of them about Highlander, which is still I mean that's another old film that a lot of people have seen, but many haven't, and Local Hero, another old film. But I feel whenever I mention Tremors, I'm just looking at people's faces to see what they're thinking, and everyone's always very polite, but I'm the one that kind of not makes a joke out of it, but I just say what it is. But you sort of think, Yeah, people must be thinking, "Oh, that's good," but Tremors of all the things.
I get that
But
so much in my real life when I have to tell people what Tremors, it's just like, it, it, yeah, let me preface it though. Like,
yeah,
but come on, like there's more to it here or whatever. Uh, but it's just interesting. So,
yeah.
what's your? Let's do your favorite and least favorite Tremors movie.
Well, I think the first one is my favorite. I do love the second film, but the first is my favorite. Um, Least favorite. Well, I mean, that's where we get into discussions about.
What?
you, you know where this is going.
Wait,
Do we
I have
count I was saying the first four. I mean, I finished the book when
you got
Tremors 5 was about to come out,
what?
and I finished my book, and I released it just as Tremors 5 was about to come out. And at the end of it, I say, what do I say? Is it a film? Is it
Is
a
it
Tremors
film
film?
or a
A
film
film called Tremors.
called Tremors? Which that's a question specifically later. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So, uh, I mean, okay, 5, 6, and 7 exist, and they are part of the universe, I suppose. Um, so one of those films is my least.
To
I don't know
preface,
which one because they're, you know,
no,
they've all got little bits in them that are entertaining, and I love seeing Michael. And they look amazing, and I think it's lovely to see. I'm so glad that some Tremors films, in a way, were made with the sort of quality of cameras. But that's a really backhanded compliment, isn't it? It's the cameras were nice, but yeah. So maybe the last one is my least favorite, but again, it looks beautiful. There are nice moments in it, so I don't know. I mean,
no,
which is the one? I think it's Tremors 5. Is it 5 where Michael where Bert shoots the
oh, he
ass
shoots,
blaster?
falls down on that guy. I love you bringing that up all the time because I bring it up all the time too. And he doesn't respond to it. He shoots the
Yeah,
ass blaster and it kills a guy. And the next scene, and you're like, oh my god, this guy is like what? Because you talk about it, where it's like he spent all this time not pointing guns at people, not trying to kill people, trying to save bad guys, and he kills a guy, and there's no anything paid to
yeah,
it. It's like
yeah. It's meant to be, I guess it's meant to be funny or throwaway joke, but that's always bothered me. And there's also, I think, again, I lose track a bit of the films. I think it's the sixth one where Michael's in, where they're back in perfection, and he goes a bit crazy. Is that the sixth one where he's? And I just thought that character, I mean, the fact that perfection doesn't look like perfection, it's now just a one little shop. And
they
and the
bulldozed,
character, his
they bulldozed the Quonset hut, they bulldozed everything. I'm just like, oh, I can't deal with
yeah.
this.
Yeah, and they just have. I know that this is not meant to be a negative episode, but I just think the way that they made him such just he was a bit nasty. Burt Gummer was, I think, a nasty kind of a nasty. I think I've only seen it once, so maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to remember just that character. I'm thinking that's not really Burt anymore. So,
You bring up a lot where it's the language, and it for me, it's not like
hmm,
because I mean, I say all men are a fuck shit cocks on this podcast, so I'm not like this isn't like oh you can't swear, but you're so right about Tremors being family friendly, and then that divergence to
hmm,
I always call it the piss and shit jokes of Tremors five,
yeah,
six, and seven, and you're just like this does not it doesn't vibe with what came before in the tonal shift. I mean, if you look at Tremors 4 and then Tremors 5 immediately after it, you're like, are these actually in the same universe? Are these like really happening together? Because I don't believe
yeah,
that. Um, it's fine, and to you're totally fair to say what you want to about 5, 6, and 7. I had to look down Michael Paul in the eye at Tremors Fest, and just and and that and just it was really funny. He was like, I used to be on social media, and then all these people hated me, and then I got off of it, and while we were at Tremors Fest, because of your book, I was like during the Q&As, I'd always, if they didn't have an answer, I'd always be able to, oh no, this is what happened. This is and I would be chiming in for everybody. And as we were leaving the theater, Don was like, "Oh, you really seem to know your stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, Don, I run a Tremors podcast, and and he's like, so you're one of the ones that was shitting on me." I was like, I may have, and I'm sorry. And he ended up giving me his phone number. He's like, "Hey, if you want to say something to me, say it to my face." And like, we have a texting relationship now, and I'm just like, I'm sorry. I said some things, but I still stand by they are beautiful films, and watching them watching 5, 6, and 7 in the theater gave me a different perspective on it. Of like, oh wow, he's got a big eye. He's got a big directorial eye. But I've always said this since the very beginning of just like, I would love a Stampede written and produced film with Don Michael Paul as a director, in terms of like, he's got a good eye vision, but like he needs
Right.
that, you got that writing and producing to rein it in or
Yeah.
whatever. So you're fine to hate. It's fine. Well, like that's
Cool. Sorry, Don.
I'll send this to Don too. So sorry, Don. We're both sorry. um, so on that note, so what separates the Stampede Entertainment movies from the rest? And I mean that like, I mean like Short Circuit and Heart and Souls, like, which I love. Heart and Souls, one of my favorite movies. Like, what separates a Stampede Entertainment movie from the rest of the pantheon of like regular movies?
Well, I think it's that. I think I've probably touched on already that mix of humor and character and plot. You know, I think their humor is such a difficult thing to do. I mean, drama is as well, but I think humor is especially difficult. And I just think that somehow they managed to get that in the characters, and the fact that in those Tremors, certainly in the first film, when you've got all these different characters and they all come on the screen almost fully formed. You know, you can tell Bert and Heather, just you can. It's almost like you can feel their history, that they're real characters, and of course that's down to the actors as well. But it's a good script that gives them that, of course. So, and also Val and Earl, and the fact that they just, you know, you can tell that they are handymen. It's like they exist in this world, and so I think with the Tremors films in particular, it really is that they created their own little universe, which is sort of a parallel to our own with monsters and things, but it is still the same world. And even if you took, I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but if you took the monsters out, you could still just have a really interesting story with these weird, slightly weird, quirky characters getting on in this little town. And I think with Short Circuit as well. I mean, that's a bit different. I mean, I think I do enjoy Short Circuit. It's been a while since I watched it, but yeah, I think I remember it being a really good film. I also did a piece on that for SFX, but that was a little while ago. But that's different. I mean, the characters are doing different things, and obviously you've got the Indian character, and it was a different time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Fisher Stevens,
Yeah.
whether he'll speak about that again, I don't know. But anyway, so no, I think just the sort of short version, I suppose, is just what I've said. You know, that mix of character and humor, and um, yeah, and other films. Of course, you get that in other films, but I just think Stephen Brent do it particularly well. And I wish they were writing so many more films. I wish we had a constant stream, even a TV. Doesn't have to be a Tremors TV show, but just those guys should be working all the time. You know, people should be paying them to write. And I know we're biased because we're fans, but they're just great. Simple.
It's that character and the humor is sorely lacking. We've reached the um I'm not shitting on the Avengers and Marvel stuff, but we've reached that Joss Whedon quippy level, and it's just
Mm,
it's okay in certain extents, but to have that character based humor is really really important. That's where like Tremors 1 I will cite as a perfect movie, because for the first 20 minutes nothing happens. It is just two dudes doing their job around town, and there's no sense of monsters or anything. For 18 minutes. I timed it out once, and it's like, and it's just them, and that's why that's like a perfect. It's so rare to get that in a monster movie. Usually, it's all action and jump up front, but you get to live in that world. That minute when they first come into Chang's, and then they're Bert and Heather and Val and Earl. They're both married couples in a sense, and they're just like jumping each other back and
Yeah.
forth. You can sense that conversation has happened 1,000 times in the last however many years they've been living there. They bump that back and forth, and yeah, it's I. Caitlin and I got the chance to see a reading of Brent and Steve's newest script, Blank Slate, in Chicago 2 years ago, and
Wow.
it's 5 or 6 people that have like amnesia, like they wake up in a cabin in the woods with amnesia, and then they have to figure out why they're there, who each other, they don't trust each other, and it ends up being something really funny. It starts out as this kind of like mystery horror thing, and then it slowly gets more and more funny as like people regain their memories and realize who they are, and they start developing their own personalities again, and it's really interesting. Honestly, that's where I would
Wow.
love to see that. Night Crew is another one that they were doing with the tremors in a building, and it's the monsters chasing janitors up the building. It's like, God, that would be good. Or Frady Cat
Wow.
Monster. I always say that
Yeah, I've got those.
Tucker's Monster is one that would easily like make a great like movie because you just do the doco style on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just too bad. I wish that Steve, if you're and Brent, if you're listening, we just want more of your stuff. That's all. We all know that.
Yeah,
um,
totally.
so if you could make a Tremors movie, what would you make? And don't say I don't know. You took a screenwriting course, so you should have some semblance of an idea here.
Well, I don't have a great answer, but someone did tell me, someone I interviewed, I think for the book, probably, this is a while ago, had told me they'd had an idea, which was that Kevin Bacon, the actor, goes to Nevada to
Oh,
um to basically go to a Tremors festival. A bit like Galaxy Quest. I guess we're talking Galaxy Quest here. Goes to the desert and giant monsters, underground worms attack, and so Kevin Bacon has to save the village or the town. That's the basic idea. So uh, that's one I've always had in my head. I think bringing it back. I think that was something interesting, of course, with those newer films. The idea that they did go international, and I do like that, and I think that's good. I think it's a shame that they changed the design of the monster, but hey, they did. That's what they did. Um, but no, to be honest, I've never really sat down and thought, well, where would I take Tremors? Because I just couldn't do it justice. I think it's Steve and Brent that can do it, and I like to think they would come up with a really clever concept. I think I'd love to see it back in perfection. Um, Something that ties into the first film again, but I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for that one. What
okay.
would you like to see? What would you like?
Well, I mean, so what's hilarious is that I've already sent you the trailer for my Tremors movie.
Yeah.
No, I actually had when we were going to Tremors Fest last year. My idea was to be like, oh, so like this fan goes to like a Tremors festival and is trying to tell like Michael Gross that like the graboids are actually real, and Michael Gross is like, that's stupid. Get out of here. That's insane. And then graboids happen at the Tremors
Yeah.
Fest. And just like switch out to Kevin Bacon, and it's like that's basically what my idea was. That's hilarious.
That would be good fun. Yeah, if Michael Gross was
Three
and
people.
Kevin Bacon, the two of them.
That's like three for one idea. I think we all got something there. We need to
Well,
needle in
wouldn't it?
on.
I mean, you could do something with Michael and Kevin being in the same film and there being tension between them because, Kevin basically says something about Tremors 2 and all the sequels. He looks down on Michael for doing them and Michael looks down on him for not doing them. And then they have to work together. So, that clash of characters would be great.
I've always wanted Kevin or Val and Grady in a movie together, and they basically like argue the whole movie about who's got more experience. Because Val's like, I fought these things before you did, and then Grady's like, well, yeah, I fought them when they turned into shriekers. And like, there's this little like, who knows more thing going on or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
Michael and
if they could do a kind of, you mentioned the Avengers, and of course, as a fan, I love the idea of them doing something that reunited all the sidekicks.
and
Uh,
Tremors game, I'm fine with that.
yeah. I mean, I think we're who knows, but I suspect there will be a remake at some point. The worrying thing is, of course, that Mike, Brent, and Steve will probably be booted out just because of these hopeless executives. Uh, anyway, I don't want to get too negative here, but in an ideal world, much as I'd like to see another sequel, I'd be happy with a reboot or a remake because the original's still there, and if it brings it to there's more chance of a new audience going to see Tremors than Tremors 8 or something like that. So uh, I think it will probably happen, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But please bring back Steve and Brent.
All right, okay. Well, enough dancing. We're gonna do this. Okay, we're gonna. I gotta get it.
Oh dear.
Well, I have. We can swing back around and stuff, but we've danced around this one so much that we just gotta like do this. Um,
Right.
no, hey, this is a podcast about Tremors, so it's not like I'm asking some hard hitting serious questions here, unless they're about Tremors. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so this is one that I personally, in researching everything that I can about Tremors, and this is far before I even knew you were going to be on this show, I noticed, and I wonder if you did too, that it seems like when you wrote your book, it almost like restarted the resurgence of Tremors. Like at that time, Tremors was dead, as you know, in that 2011, and then you started writing the book. And when I go back and I look at the Stampede site, and you look at Steve's answers to questions all the time, from about 2011 to 2015, you see this ramp up that starts to happen, where like, oh, Universal like finally has an interest in the book, or has an interest in making the movie, and then as we know, they get kicked out or whatever. Do you think that your book might have like accidentally contributed to that in some really bizarre, like in bringing Tremors back and then making the fan base really want something, and then because of the way marketing departments work, they went like, well, we don't need the Stampede people, we can just use fans.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I did speak to, I think is it Patty Jackson? I think that was the lady that was the sort of, I can't remember her title, but kind of the head of the spin-off division, whatever you want to call it, direct to TV.
What I understood her producing job as, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and so I spoke to her kind of early on, I think, and yeah, it probably would have been about 2012 or 13 that I spoke to her. But actually, I think I seem to remember when I spoke to her, she did hint that something might be coming. So no, I think for whatever reason, Tremors. Of course, I had no idea when I was doing it that this was happening, and nobody I spoke to gave any suggestion or hint that they knew. And it was only when I think I spoke to her and she said something about, oh well, if things work out well, we might have something new. So I can't really put myself. I wish I could claim that, but it was very odd. I mean, I think I was kind of ready to publish or getting ready, and then it was announced about this new film, and of course that's why in the book, from memory, it's just me going on to Facebook and finding. I think there was one actor that had tweeted something or put it on Facebook by accident, and I latched onto it. I was like, oh, that's a hint, which we didn't know about. So yeah, it's a weird last couple of chapters because I'm just piecing together what might happen. And so no, I don't know. Hard to say, but I don't think it was much to do with it. But you never know. It might have. may have helped a little bit.
Yeah,
Don't
well,
know.
I imagine it's harder for you being inside of it or whatever to be like, oh yeah, no, I did something there. But like if I were to piece out Tremors information on a graph, it does like it's your book, and then like, oh, let's make this like Tremors 5 all of a sudden, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I definitely see that. Just like the marketing people being like, oh, there's all this fervor over a new book, let's put out a new movie. Um, it was just interesting. I just had to like
Hmm.
actually I kind of knew you wouldn't like have a real answer because I doubt anybody else has like put that forward to you in terms of like, oh yeah, you
No.
caught Tremors 5 and Universal and Stampede to split up. Which I plead, no, you didn't. You're a great guy. I would never suggest that.
No,
But yeah, it
no.
was interesting little.
Well, I do remember at the time, and this is I don't want to say too much in case I'm betraying confidences or anything, but it has been a while since it all happened, and people have spoken since. But I do remember when the book was due to come out, Brent and Steve and Nancy, speaking to them and just trying to work out what I should say in the book about that, because they didn't want to be negative, but they were very sad and they felt, well, they would need to say how they felt, but of course they were sad and their baby had been taken away from them. So that was a difficult moment because I felt that I had their confidence, if you like, and 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 I could have written, not, of course I wouldn't, but you could in theory write things that they'd written in emails or said to you in person just to have a cool little story in your book. But no, so that was a I mean, yeah, I was going to say, is that a difficult time? It was just a sad time as a fan having this book coming out, which was meant to celebrate the franchise, and then to kind of end it on, oh, those guys have been let go, dumped.
Everybody that I've been talking to and says they love Tremors and love making it is now all of a sudden
Yeah,
not making Tremors. And
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, but I do think they've been very, I don't know what words you would use, but I think they've been very gracious, I suppose, in all these years. I think they're just, use that word again, just lovely people. And in this, and that, in the film and TV industry, I guess you do, I don't think they have to play it so nice. They could have come out and said, "Oh, we're going to sue Universal," or, we should be doing this. Why are they doing it? But I think they just said, "Look, well, again, I'm paraphrasing, but it feels like they said, look, we know." I think one of them said to me, "We know the worms," or they know the worms, and I think they've been proved right in that they know the characters, they know what Tremors is not just a monster movie. It's not just a special effects movie, and I think the the problem is that some people just think it is, and I think some of the executives probably thought it was, and they think, let's just spend a bit more money on special effects, and we can do amazing things on less money now because people at home on their computers can do amazing visual effects. But Tremors isn't about that really. The monsters are it's about the characters. So, and that's why they got it wrong with Bert by changing his character, and nobody realized. I mean, I think Michael must have realized, but there's only so much he can do as an actor. He's not. I think he was maybe exec producer by that point, but I guess you can't just stop a film in its tracks and say, "Well, Bert wouldn't say that. I'm not doing it," because he needs to earn money. So difficult. It's difficult all around. But I think the Stampede guys have been very, very
gracious.
good, and we're probably saying more than they've ever said. To be honest, publicly, I could be wrong, but I've not really. Maybe they said more at Tremors Fest, but they're
I,
nice guys. So
yeah, I don't hold back sometimes. I don't try to divulge what I read in emails, but if they've said it
yeah,
publicly somewhere, and that's
yeah,
where I
yeah, yeah,
go back to the Stampede site or what they've said in interviews, and it's like, oh no, I will tell everybody that you said that. Like the one I always go back to, and it was that what we talked about at the beginning, is Universal in when Tremors 2 was happening. We could sell an empty box named Tremors, and I love to shove that down everyone, not like down the audience's throat of my show, but just like if I got a Universal executive in the room, I would be like, so you can sell an empty box named Tremors? You can really do that? Like really? And that's a selling point to you. That's fine. I just want you to look me in the eyes and tell me that. Like that I'm just buying the empty box. Like that's
Yeah.
it's it's the freedom I'm afforded with a podcast is that most people don't listen to however long these end up being. So I get to just like, no, that was bad. That was really bad what they did there. And what you said about the
Mm,
race show, so true. So I was talking about their commentary for Tremors 2. You're releasing a commentary, like doing this commentary track, or like almost 30 years later, and having to talk about a franchise that you're kicked out of is just oof. And
yeah. Yeah.
even seeing Steve and Ron at the Tremors Fest, they could only be there for the first 2 days, and they were not going to be there for the Tremors 5, 6, and 7 stuff because it's just like, nope, that's
Oh,
a,
yeah, that would hurt. Yeah.
and I can't, I don't want to imagine that thing, frankly. Um, so, okay, but I'm gonna do this. Why do you think it happened? All right, this is like a number one question I have on this show all the time. Is that just like what? Why did that split happen between Universal and Stampede? I hear your confusion on plenty of podcasts. You've had 8, 9 years now after the book is done, and seeing that there's a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and a Kevin Bacon show, and then there was going to be an 8 with Bill Watterson from Dave Made a Maze. Like, why did Universal just get rid of the Stampede guys? That's my
I think, again, who knows apart from the Universal, but I think possibly it came down to control. Sorry?
no. I was just stating, like, for the pod. This is all conjecture. This is not fact.
Yeah.
This is Jonathan's opinion. This is not realsy, but
I think it possibly came down to control. And I think the Stampede guys always had control of their films. Okay, they couldn't control the budget, but they were writing them and directing them and producing them and I guess approving casting and all the things that they did so well. And um and I think by the time what was it, 10 years or so later or more that they came to do the new one, I wonder if it was just down to the people, whoever it was making the decisions, that said, no, we want to do it ourselves. Why should we have these guys doing it? So I think there's maybe something in that, and just saying, look, we could easily, and I think Steve maybe mentioned to me, and it's probably in the book, that if they hadn't done, I think Tremors 2 would have been done, or Tremors 3 would have been done without them.
oh yeah.
If they'd said no, it would have happened anyway. And so probably by the time it came around, maybe they would have to be paid more. The budget was probably less. Maybe there would have been more to do with rights or you know money just going, what's the word, like residual type payments. So I don't know. I'm guessing it just came probably down to money and and uh and again that sort of control thing. And maybe when it comes, so that's all I can say. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wish I knew, but hey, I don't know. People, it's great that there are fans, and with every film, this is what I was saying about a remake, potential remake. That if and when it happens, because everything's getting remade, that will bring new fans to the franchise, and they will then discover the original. And even if the remake is terrible, people will still be able to go, oh, what's the other Tremors film? I'll watch that instead, and I love it. So no, these films exist, of course, and new fans have found the franchise, and I suppose there's a positive there. But yeah,
Nope. You answered that. Just like I said, I have 50 episodes and 2 years of this, and I still can't pinpoint that answer outside of money. So is the
I think
control thing.
most things come back to money, don't they? Most things in life come back to money, so money must have been involved.
And
Who
see,
knows what the contract situation was? And of course, Stampede don't need to announce this, or never will, and never should have to. But maybe there was contractual things in there that said, we expect X, Y, and Z. We've been in the industry so long that we get this, that, and the other, and Universal were like, no, we don't want to do that, so we won't. So, but
The right of first refusal clause is the one that I see a lot. There was the article by Hollywood Unseen that did the whole Tremors 5 Gummer Down Under thing. And there was a very specific sentence from Steve that was like, back like they did 7 or 8 drafts for 10 years back and forth on Tremors 5. And then all of a sudden their right of first refusal clause expired in their contract. And then they were like, let's make a Tremors 5. And that
yeah,
was, and knowing
there you go.
Steve, where I love Steve, he's a very no nonsense person, like just talking to him. And you can sense the like, I'm not gonna, I'll put my glasses on. I always do my Steve impression. I'm not gonna like say that this is actually what happened here or whatever, but I know enough to know that maybe it did. Just the little like
There
you
you
can
go.
look
Yeah,
the dots there, and that's my like I said, I can't say that for sure. I don't know for sure. I have my own theories, but that's I would something happened there with that because I can't say it's money because I would I've heard it so many times that Tremors 2 and that all the other ones they would like they would take their producer fee and put it into the movie. They're like, oh no, I'm not going to be paid that, and put it back into the movie so the movie can be better. So I'm like, so that's not like that doesn't scream to me someone who really cared about the money. So that's where I'm conjecturing all over the place here. This is no. So Jonathan,
yeah.
what's your favorite Tremors creature?
Is
We're
that well? I mean, I love. I don't know. I mean, I think the worm. I think the worm is great. El Blanco.
gonna, yeah, he's pretty awesome. If he's dead, I'll be sad. I would love to. He needs to swallow Bert, and then he can die, and then that's the end of that
Yeah,
character. The only
yeah,
graboid I accept to swallow Bert Gummer is El Blanco.
yeah. No, I do like the Shriekers as well. I think the first reveal of the Shriekers in Tremors 2 is great. Great fun.
For me, it's Shriekers. I love Shriekers. Always
Yeah,
be my graboids are cool, but I just something about the Shriekers is my like. I need to. That's where I got my own Tremors movie, and I can only make graboids, and I can't make. I need to make a full scale Shrieker, but that that costs lots and lots of money. But
yeah.
Shrieker is amazing. Sorry, that was such a whoop, whoop. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, I have lots of these weird back and forth, but I'm trying to be efficient here. So, would you live in perfection? Would you be a Larry Norville, and would you go live in perfection given the chance?
I think if Bert was there, I think I would feel safer.
Good
But I
point.
think if Bert moved away, then I'd be. And he's hardly in. Of course, he's traveling in the later films. So I wonder what's going on back in Perfection. That one building, the village, that town that's left. But no, I think it would be a cool. I think could be quite a cool little place to live.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No one's brought that up. That if Bert's there, you're pretty much safe. Like
Yeah,
he's got
I think so.
Bert. Uh, um, who's your favorite character in the whole of everything?
I mean, I think Bert has to be my favorite character. Um, yeah, I think it's Bert.
Yeah,
He's just such just an amazing creation, and the lines that he gets are just so. The fact that Steve and Brent and maybe mainly Steve, I'm not sure, but you'll put the words. He just always has the best one-liners and the best dialogue, and you just think that's wow, what a talent.
he's
Yeah.
quotable. Like there's
Oh,
not a.
totally.
I think you said it in the book that there's not Michael Gross doesn't deliver a bad line reading,
Yeah.
and
Incredible
wonderful.
guy. Yeah.
Uh, okay, since Bert's your favorite, I'm here. We're doing this question. What do you think about Burt Gummer fans? So this is a constant question for me as an American. Like it's what do you think about them Burt Gummer fans? Do you think Burt Gummer fans have contributed to the demise of America?
Oh wow, that's a big discussion. I mean, you know, based in the UK, we don't, you know, guns are nobody has guns. It's like I don't know anyone with a gun, and the police don't have guns, and so we look at America. You know, when I came to America, when I came to launch my book in LA in 2015 or 16, 15, I think it was. What going past it was at the Famous Monsters or
Yes, famous.
I can't quite.
I think the
Yeah,
one with,
yeah,
I think, yep.
yeah, and across the road there's like an ammo store. And for us, it's just we see these things and we have to take photos and put them on our Facebook and say, look at this, they have ammo stores here. So uh so I don't know. It's Burt Gummer fans. I mean, I'm sure they're lovely people to speak to. It's just I appreciate that they're yeah, they're different people with different views, aren't they?
That
I don't know
totally.
where to go with this one.
I've made good friends with lots of Burt Gummer fans. I'm not making a generalization.
Yeah.
Although I kind of am. It's more just like we both know what I'm talking about when I say that. We're just like, there's a lot of people that look at that gun wall and they're like, oh, I could beat that. You're like, please, that was a joke. That was a visual gag. It's not it's not something to aspire to. That's fine. It's okay. Um, I
Yeah.
feel Michael all the time. Honestly, like because he's very politically outspoken on his Facebook page or whatever, and then you just get those people coming in that are like, "How could you betray us like this? You're just an actor," and like, oh, like it's like the guy made the character. Maybe you should listen to him what he says about what the character is and does. And I
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel bad, but I just had to ask because yeah, you're Scottish. That was really the reason I asked. Is that we must so strange to you over there. To that point, do you think that Burt Gummer? Oh, go ahead. No, no, no.
Well, sorry, I don't want to interrupt the podcast too much, but I will have to go soon just because I need to go into to town and meet people.
Not a
So
thing.
you
No,
can
I know.
cut that bit out, but
No, no, no. That's good. Honestly, we're doing
but I
pretty
mean,
good.
I'd be happy to talk again, but I don't know if you wanted to jump to a couple of if there's any
Uh,
really pressing ones. I don't want to spoil your
I have one more like big one.
go for
Honestly,
it,
we're
go for it.
need to. Actually, there's
Can
two.
I yeah, you know, that's fine. Okay.
No, what? Go ahead.
Well, if I just wanted, it's only if you can edit this bit out. I was just going to go and get my phone just so I can see if my friends have texted. Is that
No, no, no.
okay?
No, go ahead. Honestly, I can vamp. Da, 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 da.
I'll just be 2 seconds.
No, no, you're great.
Cheers.
I'm
Okay.
not gonna edit this either. So everybody knows I don't believe in editing. And John, when you listen back to this, because I know John will, um, this is if you came back for another episode, I would love that. I do have another. That's like I can't even. I should have counted. I should always count these before I start, but I don't because it's really. I like the flow. I like the flow of it. I have something like how's Melville these days? Who's your favorite doctor? It's Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi is the best doctor. He's the best actor. It doesn't matter what you say. Peter Capaldi is the best actor of all. Um, yeah, I did. I saved it. I do have it written here because he is. But no, if you need to go,
Capaldi's
I only have two that would be pressing. Although I would die if you came back for a part two, um,
that
because I
would be
would.
cool. I'd be up for that.
No, honestly, John, I would. Because we could just. I was telling my wife Caitlin beforehand that I was so excited to talk to you uh, because you're the only other person in the world besides maybe Octavio or Steve or Michael who knows everything. So then we're starting off on this big slate of like, okay, we know all of this. All the stupid questions about Kevin Bacon and Reba and everything's off to the side. Like we can just talk about what the fuck happened there with Tremors 5, 6, and 7. But like I said, I want you to go have fun with your friends, but I have only two questions that I really, really wanted to get to. Although
Go
I
for it.
have key questions left here
Well,
too.
if you want to do that, and then we could all definitely do a part two at some point.
No, that makes it a real 50th episode then. Like, yeah, that'll be like that's punch it. But I have one. It was my and it's because of your Highlander book. And I was totally kicking myself. I literally just bought a kind of magic at a local hero this morning. I was like, oh my
Oh
god,
wow.
why? Oh fuck yeah! Oh my god! Oh dude, I have a. If I have anyone on my show, I try to get all the pieces of it together. Like if I ever have Michael Gross on the show, I've told him this before. He's like, oh, I don't want to do it. I'm like, but Michael, all we talk about is trains. Like I just want to talk to you about trains.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I just want to talk trains to you. But you were talking about your Highlander book, and there's a story in it of Christopher. There's an accident that happened on set with Christopher Lambert and getting stabbed in the face or whatever, and then
Yeah.
people told you this happened, but then when you talk to Christopher Lambert, he's like, no, that didn't happen. That's not real. But then you actually looked it up on the call sheet, and oh, lo and behold,
Yeah. Yeah.
what Christopher Lambert's story about Tremors? Like, there's like, what would be that one discrepancy? And there's one that you talk about that's Michael or Ron says that Michael Gross's audition, he was up on the table doing like, oh, and shouting at worms, but then Michael's like, I didn't do that. Like, what would be your one like Christopher Lamb? This happened, but they say it didn't happen. Like story, like, and you don't. I see that smile. You
No.
don't divulge
No, I'm
anything.
not.
You cannot
Well,
like.
I think, well, there's one story about my mind going back now that when they were, it's not very exciting, but when they were when they were building Perfection the first time around, and I think the story was around the guy who I think was driving I think they had like a, what's it called? The steamroller type thing. And I think they destroyed half of the plant life or something. I know this is a bit of a vague, it's a while since I heard this story. But some of the things that were being said about, I think it was the guy that did that, I didn't put in the book because I thought I don't want to get sued. Um, and that happens sometimes. I mean, I think these films like Highlander, something I didn't go into really any detail about was the fact that it was the 80s on Highlander, and drugs were a big thing on film sets, as they were in a lot of places. But in those days, I think it was, now it's on social media within 5 minutes if someone gets high, I'm sure, on a set. Whereas I think back then it was a different story. So I think there are things I kind of missed out that people maybe said as an aside, that I just thought I don't want to get into trouble. And it's a little bit the same with Tremors. I can't think of any real stories where people were saying don't say this, but I think there was certainly one person who I think didn't last long on the film, who I think only was there for trying to build some of Perfection, and then they were chucked off because of maybe some of the substances that they might have been on. But I'm not mentioning any names, and
Oh
it's
no,
nobody that I interviewed, so
we got like hundreds of
it's a
people
bit
on it.
different to
We got people on a set that the things can happen. Like things go all over the place. Not even with drugs or anything like that. Mistakes can happen so easily. You've got a nephew of one of the producers on the set, like, and oh God, old Tim, just like ran over all the plant life with a steamroller. It's just like that sounds 100% plausible. But
yeah.
expecting anything interesting, it was just more like, is there anything? And honestly, that's pretty funny to hear. And then we'll finish up here. Everybody wants to know, and I want to know too. Are we getting a second edition of the book?
I don't know. I don't know. I have thought about this a lot, and I have got new interviews that I've done over the years that I couldn't get the first time around. So I spoke to Nestor, and I spoke to the doc, Doctor, so Conrad Bachman. Um, and I spoke to a guy that did the PR, I think, for the original film. And I spoke to oh, his name's gone out of my head now. Tremors 4, the kind of sidekick character. What's the actor's name? The
Oh my God. Brent Rome.
Yes, Brent
Yeah,
Rome. Brett or Brent. I tracked him down a few years ago and spoke to him, and he's retired from acting now. He's a preacher, I think.
I've seen this. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I interviewed him. So there's a few interviews that are outstanding, and then of course there's all these new films. So I have sort of thought about maybe doing like an addendum or a part two, because I don't think it's fair on people to have to then buy the book again.
Yeah. I would.
I mean, well, I know you would, and I have done it before for books. Like I'm a big fan of Rockford Files, and the
Yeah.
guy that wrote the book on that, brilliant, one of the best film. And in fact, I copied a lot of his format for my book. It was so good. But he's had about 3 versions of that book, and he'll just add in new interviews over time. So I don't know. I've thought about it, but I just don't know if I want to write about those last 3 films.
I'll do it for you.
Uh,
Say you wrote it. I'll ghostwrite for you. I'll do it.
Well, you could write one on those three, and of course Octavio's doing his book,
Yeah.
which I haven't asked him too much about what's in it, and or I'm guessing he must cover all the films, but uh, I'm intrigued to know how he does it. Like he probably won't just copy what I did, the
Oh
format
no.
I had because it's been done. So I think it'd be interesting to see what he does and if his book gets an English language version because I want to read it.
I wanted to talk to you about because he put it on to me like how do we get it published in the English language? And I was like, well, I'll just ask John. And how do we get it published? We can talk about that later on other things. But I was like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
wanted to piece that out with John because John would know because that's the thing I've come to love about Tremors fans and immersing myself in the fandom is it's that time honored phrase of we got to do what we can with what we got, and that's
Yeah.
and I do. That's why I love doing this show and love doing it and hanging out with everybody. And oh, you
But
about
also,
said
what I would maybe do if I was to do, I mean, maybe it would be a new version of the first book. But I think if it was a sort of second, part two, I'd maybe put some of the longer transcripts that I did, some of the original interviews I did with the likes of Michael or Marcia Strassman, or some of the people that you will likely not hear much from. And so sometimes for some interviews, I put everything in, and some of them I couldn't put it all in because it just didn't quite work. So maybe I could put a bit extra, like a bonus features type thing.
you were
But
talking about that with Martha Strassman because she was on the Rockford Files or she was talking about James
yeah,
Garner. Was it?
yeah.
But I heard it several times when you're talking to podcasts that you're like, man, I would love to just. It doesn't fit into a book about Tremors, but I would love to put it in there. And I say, just put it in, John. We'll read it. Nobody cares. We'll do it. It's all part of the tapestry of Tremors that is here. Um,
Hard to know, isn't it? I mean, maybe another hand, maybe I should do like the ultimate Tremors book and put in the other sequels and the pilot. I don't know, but I'm not saying no, but it just takes a lot of time.
Well, and that's what I'll end it up here, where it's like that's why I love your book, and so everybody knows by Seeking Perfection, the official guide to Tremors. I know he says it's unofficial because Universal will sue him, but I don't care. It's the official guide to me. Is that it's a great book about Tremors, but it is a fantastic book about making anything like any kind of entertainment, movies or TV show, like. That's where it's like, oh yeah, you got a book on Highlander and local hero. I don't know what local hero is, but I'm gonna read it. I can't wait for your book on Jim Henson. What you said about the like just doing the interviews, that one, like, oh my, yeah. When are you gonna write a Doctor Who book? Like all these, like you have such a great
Yeah.
perspective. It's like, oh no, I would trust any book that you wrote to go even further than just the giant worms of it all, and dig deep onto the
Well,
whole.
because you've listened to other interviews, you know that I often say writing the TV series chapter was maybe my favorite because I think nobody else would ever write a chapter unless Octavio's done that. But not many people would write a chapter about a 13 episode TV series that then got cancelled. But for me, it was just the most, rewarding part of it all. I think after the first film, probably that TV series chapter, because all those different personalities and all the things that went wrong, and a lot went right, of course, because the episodes are great. Many of them, some of them aren't, but I think as a fan, it's just for me, it was really interesting to know why they're not very good or what went wrong. And Brent and Steve were just very honest. So yeah, so I have tweeted and said before, if even if you just buy it for the, not that anyone would, but just buy it for the TV section, please do, because again, it's that thing if people just won't. It was a bit as lightning in a bottle speaking to these people that I spoke to. Jim Jacks, I got to speak to, amazing, and you'll hear I hear Kevin Smith being interviewed, and he'll mention Jim Jacks and what an impression or an effect, an impact he had in his life. And in fact, I met Kevin Smith here in Edinburgh and gave him a copy of the book and just said, Jim Jacks is mentioned in it. Who knows if you read the book, uh, but it's just things like that. And so just, yeah, getting to speak to these people was amazing. And yeah, back to that thing again. If you get a chance to speak to somebody, try, do it.
On
So
that, it's been wonderful speaking to you, John. And yes, if you would love to come back again, like I said, I got another three-quarters of the questions I did not ask here, and
oh,
I'll
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just one of those nights where I've got to.
no.
My Saturdays are never that busy normally, but this one I've got something to. I've got actually a play that I mentioned. Talk about plays. There's a great version of Jekyll and Hyde that's on a one-man version stage show. So I'm going to see that later.
Oh, I wish you. That sounds awesome. Um, but yeah, and everybody that's been thanked on my show before, you're being thanked now. I love you all so much. And John, like it's the last word time, so I'll just let you ramble till you want to stop and thank everybody and plug all the things you want to plug. And I'll just sit back here and nod. You'll be like, yeah, I love it.
Well, I'll say thank you to you first of all for all the positive tweets that and other messages on the internet that you've put out over the last decade or 6 or 7 years, whatever. It's always nice to see positive and just really nice things. Because that's the thing when you create anything, it often goes off into a vacuum and you don't know if anyone liked it or not. So it's always nice, not just for the ego, but it's always just nice to get someone saying, "Oh, I really enjoyed that thing, whatever it was." So that's nice. And I guess I've probably said a lot of it already, but I just think, back to that thing about being creative. I think Tremors fans, like a lot of fans, are very creative, and I think I mean, it's nice, of course, that I've got currently the only book out there on Tremors. But I'm glad that someone else is having a go as well. And I can't wait to see, even though I can't speak Spanish, but hopefully we'll get a translated version. So good luck with that, Octavio. I can't wait to see what he comes up with. Um, and yeah, I guess I hope we get more Tremors at some point. I'd love to see that. I think, and I also hope we get more special edition Blu-rays and 4Ks and things like that. I can't believe we've got Tremors 2 on 4K. So I wonder if Tremors 3 and 4 will happen. And I could just keep talking, couldn't I? But no, just yeah. If anyone has any questions, either email to Levi or get in touch with me about Tremors, and happy to chat. And I hope we can do a part 2.